If you were around for the original release of Siri in 2011, you probably remember being impressed by the technology.
If you've ever wished for a personal assistant to remind you of everything and follow your every command, Apple wants you to meet Siri.
Siri, that's what we're talking about. The new iPhone coming out, and this is all the craze.
Siri is the new thing. It's the next wave in voice technology and your own personal assistant right there in your pocket.
But it only took a few years for the excitement to fade and be replaced by frustration.
Siri doesn't always let you finish your sentence. Text my best friend. And just like that, she totally cut me off.
The voice assistant continues to perform poorly even to this day.
Dear Tim Cook, your Hey Siri does not work. On the new iPhones, it does not.
I need to know if it's only me that is having severe issues with Siri. It literally can't spell a sentence, correctly.
Hey Siri, could you send a message, please? Hey Siri?
So how did Siri go from being the world's most impressive voice assistant in 2011 to the world's worst in just a few years? Well, a lot of it had to do with its outdated underlying technology. Being first to market with a voice assistant turned out to be more of a curse than a blessing for Apple. Because in the world of AI, things change rapidly. But once you go all in on a certain AI architecture, you're basically stuck with it. Creating a new voice assistant on a new architecture means rebuilding it from scratch. The technology that Siri's based on, known as Open Agent Architecture, was pioneered by Adam Shear at SRI International in 1993. That's when he created the first Siri prototype, although at that time it didn't have a name. Over 20 years, Shear built 50 iterations of the technology, with a final commercialized iPhone Siri app built with help from Dag Kitlis and Tom Gruber in 2008. Kitlis suggested calling it Siri, named after his co-worker in Norway. It was a shortened form of the name Sigrid, which means victory and beautiful in Old Norse, two words no one really associates with Siri today, but back then they still had hope. And initially, things went well. When the Siri app was released in February 2010, it was an instant hit, becoming so popular that it caught the attention of Steve Jobs, who immediately became hooked, since it embodied Jobs' idealistic vision for technology. He didn't think people should have to search for information using internet browsers or apps. Instead, technology should do the legwork, bringing the information to them. Jobs also believed in creative industrial design, which brings me to this video's sponsor, AULUMU, who makes iPhone accessories like this A17 Slim shockproof case with super cool cyberpunk aesthetics, making your phone stand out in a sea of minimalist devices. But these cases are about more than aesthetics. It has an aerospace-grade aluminum camera frame that's 3 times harder than standard frames, ensuring the most fragile part of your iPhone 17 Pro stays protected. And it's made of a proprietary superconductive silicon that boosts cooling efficiency by 46% compared to standard cases, resulting in a temperature reduction of 2 to 3 degrees Celsius while operating at peak performance. But when your phone is inside a case, it's hard to feel just how hot it is. But this temperature sensor on AULUMU's A17 case makes it easy, staying red at normal temperatures of around 25 degrees, then turning orange once the phone reaches 40 degrees, and finally turning yellow at 45 degrees. A super cool feature I've never seen on a case before. There are also these raised bumpers at each corner that are critical for the 17 Pro, since its soft aluminum can still be damaged when dropped with thin cases that don't have enough edge protection. So tap the link in the comments and pick your favorite AULUMU A17 case today. Alright, now Siri's CEO Dag Kitlis agreed with Jobs' goal for the technology, saying the ultimate vision was that you could talk to the internet and your assistant would just handle everything for you. You wouldn't even need to know where that information came from. The whole app and website discovery problem would be taken out of the equation. Now, if you think about it, what Jobs and Kitlis were describing is ChatGPT, or any generative AI powered by LLMs. But the foundational architecture for that technology wouldn't be invented until 2017. Instead, Siri was a rule-based AI, which meant it could only do things it was manually programmed to do, referred to by engineers as domains of knowledge. When the Siri app originally launched, it had about 25 of these domains, ranging from dining and entertainment to weather and transportation, so that when asked about Italian food, it could identify keywords related to dining and display a list of local Italian restaurants. But there were limitations to this technology, which Apple quickly discovered after purchasing it. Richard Williamson, who led the newly formed Siri team, described the realization, saying, "There was a lot of smoke and mirrors behind the original Siri implementation. It wasn't AI. There was no natural language processing, no contextualization of words. It was just keyword matching. That meant once a keyword was matched to a specific domain, Siri would only return results from that category. For example,
there's a movie called Score, which is about movie scores. So I actually asked Siri on my Apple TV, score, and it said, what games, what sports?
I was going to say, what do you want to score?
That word got siloed into the sports domain.
It was also difficult to scale Siri from an app with thousands of users to a native iPhone feature with millions. Williamson said, Scott Forstall made the Siri acquisition with very little vetting, based on the demos. We had to take that and make it scale, and that was an engineering problem. How do we make the software not crash? It was a hot mess. The Siri team only had about a year to make that happen, since Jobs wanted it to be the headlining feature of iPhone 4S. To meet the deadline, compromises had to be made. Siri's number of domains was reduced from 25 to 15, while access to third-party APIs was removed completely. That meant Siri could no longer buy movie tickets or make restaurant reservations. Instead, it could only show a list of theaters or restaurants. Then users had to make ticket purchases or reservations manually. This frustrated the original Siri co-founders, since they wanted it to become an app store for AI, where developers could add support for their service similar to making an app for iPhone. That way, Siri would become more capable every day. But Jobs wanted to focus on features only Apple controlled, promising the Siri team they'd create a third-party ecosystem later on. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to keep that promise since he passed away just one day after Siri was introduced. A former employee said, when Steve Jobs died, they lost the vision. They didn't have the big picture. By October 2011, Siri was prepared to ship, although it was only available on the new iPhone 4S. This frustrated iPhone 3GS and 4 users since the original Siri app supported these devices, until Apple bought it and shut it down. There were rumors that the new version of Siri was technically able to run on the 3GS and 4, but Apple decided against it for two reasons. First was marketing. iPhone 4S wouldn't be a major upgrade over the 4. In fact, many customers were expecting an iPhone 5, so it needed a standout feature to boost its appeal and minimize disappointment. Second was stability. Apple was struggling to scale Siri to support millions of users. By limiting the feature to the 4S, it would put less stress on their servers, lowering the risk of Siri crashing. By the time iPhone 4S launched, Apple did have a working version of Siri, but it was buggy and unstable. Instead of delaying the feature, they gave it a beta label instead, which served as a warning to customers that Siri was a work in progress and may experience errors. Despite this, customers were excited by the Siri announcement, causing many people to upgrade from their iPhone 3GS or 4 who may not have otherwise. This helped Apple sell a record-breaking 4 million iPhone 4S units in just 3 days, more than double the iPhone 4's performance the previous year. This was obviously good news for Apple, but a challenge for the Siri team, who didn't expect so many people using the feature so soon. This began a weeks-long battle to prevent Siri's servers from being overloaded and crashing. Williamson, the guy in charge of Siri's team, said after launch, Siri was a disaster. It was slow when it worked at all. The software was riddled with serious bugs. Another former employee said keeping Siri from crashing was like a war, one they lost on the very first day iPhone 4S went on sale. Due to so many people using the feature at the same time, Siri's servers weren't able to fulfill every request, causing intermittent outages. Affected users received replies from Siri that read, "Sorry, I'm having trouble connecting to the network." This lasted about 48 hours. The first total Siri outage occurred 20 days after launch and lasted about 5 hours. 3 days after that, some users experienced another intermittent outage. These crashes created hostility between the original Siri founders and Apple's Siri team, since each blamed the other for the failed launch. This internal conflict would become a recurring issue. Some team members thought Siri should be treated like an online service and receive continuous improvements, while others believed it should only be updated annually. Some wanted to open up Siri to developers as quickly as possible, while others pushed for delays, since Siri's original software was so brittle and inflexible. That problem triggered another debate. about whether the team should improve Siri's existing code or if they should redo it from scratch. Looking back, it appears Apple made the wrong decision every time. Siri's original code was never scrapped, developers didn't have access to Siri for over 5 years, and it only ever received annual updates alongside iOS. All of this had such a detrimental effect on Siri's development that it took 2 years to exit the beta stage. For comparison, FaceTime for Mac took 4 months, and iCloud Photo Library took 5 months. That meant while Apple spent 2 years trying to fix broken code, other companies were building voice assistants on modern AI technology. In 2014, Microsoft Cortana and Amazon Alexa were released. Both were built on cloud-based architecture, meaning they operated sort of like websites. Their codebase existed on the internet, and developers could create custom features similar to creating a custom web page. If Amazon didn't like a developer's feature, they simply disconnected it from Alexa. If a feature was buggy, it could be fixed the same day with an update, which only affected the code for that specific feature. So, like websites on the internet, hundreds of features could be added, updated, or removed from Alexa simultaneously. That's how it grew from just 10 domains of knowledge in 2014 to over 1,000 in 2016, all while Siri was stuck at 15. In fact, 10 days after Alexa hit 1,000 domains, Apple finally opened up Siri to developers, meaning it took them 5 years to do something Amazon did in 7 months. But despite that extra time, Apple's implementation was far worse. It was called SiriKit and had so many limitations that it defeated the purpose of third-party support entirely. For example, if you didn't already have an app running on iOS, you couldn't develop for Siri. If you did have an app, but it didn't fall under one of these 6 categories, you still couldn't develop any features for Siri. Even if you met those requirements, all you could do is provide Siri with data from your app. You couldn't control Siri's phrasing, how a user requested your app's data, and you couldn't create new domains of knowledge. There were also memory restrictions, so developers could only program Siri to complete simple, quick actions rather than complex tasks that used more processing power. And updating a feature that you created for Siri took weeks. You had to rewrite the app code, submit it to Apple for review, and wait for the app to be updated on a user's phone. Most of Siri's problems were caused by its original database, which was built like a house of cards. Removing or adding one line of code caused the whole thing to collapse. So adding a new phrase or piece of knowledge, like who the new president might be, meant rebuilding the entire database, a process that could take up to 6 weeks. Adding a complicated new feature like an additional domain of knowledge took up to a year. With this glacial pace of improvement, it was inevitable that Siri would fall behind the competition. By 2016, there were 2 schools of thought inside Apple. One that believed AI was the future of technology, and another that was skeptical of it. One of the biggest skeptics was Craig Federighi, Apple's senior vice president of software engineering. He felt there were fundamental flaws with modern AI that had to be solved before Apple went all in. A big one was accuracy. He said, "A feature isn't useful if it's only right 80% of the time." That's why he favored Siri's outdated but accurate rule-based architecture. Manually programming every response and data point may have been painfully slow, but it was the only way to ensure Siri gave users accurate information. He also disagreed with cloud-based AI, since it, quote, vacuumed up user data, which violated their privacy. That's why he favored local, on-device AI that may have been less capable, but kept a user's interaction private. Several executives inside Apple tried convincing Federighi to compromise, since AI was, quote, something revolutionary and much more powerful than we first understood. But it was never taken seriously and fell on deaf ears. This resulted in stalled AI development within Apple. Siri became an afterthought, as futuristic hardware like the Vision Pro and self-driving Apple Car became their focus. But in 2022, ChatGPT gave them a much-needed reality check. People didn't want $3,500 augmented reality headsets. They wanted the same thing as Jobs, an assistant that could do anything for you just by asking. Apple had strayed so far from that original vision that when chatbots became popular, Apple was dismissive of the technology. A strange reaction considering Siri was the original chatbot. I mean, the ChatGPT agent feature from OpenAI is literally what Steve Jobs wanted Siri to become. It can book appointments, create travel itineraries, compare prices of utility providers, plan date nights, create slideshows, and more. Now, don't get me wrong, AI like this one isn't perfect, but no technology is. And compared to Siri, I think any reasonable person would prefer the advanced capabilities of a modern generative AI like ChatGPT or Google Gemini. Apple eventually had the same realization in 2023 when they began working on their own generative AI technology based on large language models. The problem was they were at least 5 years behind other companies who were able to recognize the importance of generative AI back in 2017. A situation eerily similar to the one RIM was in when the original iPhone was introduced. Steve Jobs literally said it was, quote, 5 years ahead of any other phone. And like Apple today, RIM was also caught completely off guard. They rushed to develop a touchscreen BlackBerry phone to compete, but it failed. Over the last 3 years, Apple rushed to develop their own LLMs. They even canceled the Apple Car so that those software engineers could help with AI. But it seems their misguided development of Siri caused irreparable damage, because for the time being, Apple's given up on using their own large language models, making a deal with Google to use their Gemini LLMs instead. Now, it may be that Apple just needs a few more years to finish developing their own AI, and eventually they'll transition away from Gemini. But for now, they're missing out on what many consider the biggest revolution in technology since the internet. In a federal court appearance last summer, one of Apple's senior executives said, "The iPhone might be irrelevant within a decade, as crazy as that sounds." AI could be a make-or-break moment for Apple, and judging by Siri's development over the past 15 years, it just might break them. This is Greg with Apple Explained. Thanks for watching till the end, and I'll see you in the next video.